terms of numbers, these armoured animals are the most successful in the world. Yes, armour is our subject today. The armadillo has flat plates of bone in its skin. But these spines also count as armour, and they don't only protect, they attack. There are armoured plants that live for hundreds of years, and huge armoured animals so persecuted by poachers that their plight is desperate. Our first creatures wear their bones on the outside.
When it comes to armour, there's no argument about which group of animals tops the list. Take all the known species of fish, reptiles, birds and mammals, multiply it by 20, and you still wouldn't have reached the number of arthropods in the world. The number of what? Yes, arthropods. Creatures like bees, spiders, scorpions, crayfish, crabs. Instead of bones on the inside, they have a hard outer covering called an exoskeleton. It even covers their eyes. Their muscles and internal organs are attached to the inside of this exterior skeleton, which is jointed to allow movement. The word arthropod actually means jointed leg. But why have your bones on the outside? Well, one reason is for protection. As anyone who lives in a warm climate knows, cockroaches are extremely successful. Their exoskeletons are so tough you could stand on one of these and it would survive. Exoskeletons are made of chitin, a hard substance containing cellulose, and with crabs, also calcium carbonate. It's excellent for making tools with which to scoop up your food. It's also good for making weapons. And the exoskeleton has another extremely important use. It prevents dehydration. In deserts, where almost nothing else can live, arthropods like the blue weevil and desert locusts not only survive, they flourish and multiply. One of the creatures best adapted to dry conditions is the scorpion, another arthropod. It's covered with a waxy coating, so that it loses hardly any moisture at all. When it does dehydrate, 40% of its body fluid can evaporate away and it will still survive. But the desert is not the ultimate arthropod home. That title would have to go to the world's rainforests. It's conservatively estimated that they contain between 6 and 9 million arthropod species. Though some people reckon there may be as many as 30 million. But how do you grow if you're encased in your own bones? What this crayfish does is shed its shell and emerge with a soft outer covering. It makes itself larger by quickly taking in water. Only then does the expanded covering harden into a new, bigger exoskeleton. An evening mist is forming over the coast of Kenya. But if we're quick, we'll get a glimpse of our next armor bearer.
As the sun sets over the Indian Ocean, an unusual creature takes to the beach. The crested porcupine is the largest porcupine in the world, and its armor is in the shape of needle-sharp spines, which can be raised into a crest along its head and back. Here it's eating a beech nut, but it will eat almost anything and ranges across much of Africa. There's even a population in southern Italy, possibly introduced by the Romans. Its quills are actually modified hairs. Some are 35 centimeters long. They're hollow, with a hard outer casing which tapers to a sharp point. If the quills fall out, they grow back, and those that have dropped onto this beach find an unexpected admirer. The spines are made of protein. Protein makes a good meal, and ghost crabs scuttle from their burrows to collect them. Some are eaten right there on the beach. Others are carried home. If your dinner is about 8 times longer than you, lugging it home is no easy matter, and getting it into the larder takes a bit of manipulation. The Great Plains of the African interior are also home to the crested porcupine. They're highly adaptable. They're found in forests, rocky terrain, even sandy deserts. And here in the Serengeti, a porcupine has attracted the attention of a pride of lions. The porcupine can't shoot its quills at a predator, but the broad end of the spines are thin-walled, and where they rub together, they give out a hissing rattle. If this doesn't put the lion off, the porcupine will actually charge at its enemy, which knows to back off. The spines are designed rather like a fisherman's hook, each tip containing hundreds of tiny barbs. Once they're embedded into an animal's flesh, they don't fall out, but instead work themselves further in. The smaller pieces of spine, slowly travelling through the body, can cause serious damage if they enter a vital organ. And if the wounds turn septic, an encounter with a crested porcupine could prove fatal, no matter how big and powerful you are. A newborn porcupine's quills are soft and white, but within about a week, they're hard and sharp, a form of armour so effective that adults have been known to kill leopards, hyenas, and even humans. But how do porcupines mate and produce babies if they're so unapproachably prickly? The answer? Very carefully. The female raises her tail. The male then stands on his hind legs, supporting himself on her spiky back. Ouch! But it's not only animals that use armour. Plants can't move, so in many ways, a bit of defensive plating is even more important to them.
Bark is armour. Tree armour. Defence against disease and insects. An oak tree, the saying goes, is 100 years a-growing, 100 years a-standing, and 100 years a-dying. So it's obviously very effective. And there's another form of plant armour, but this one's against drought. In the desert, loss of water is the main enemy. The spikes, growing from a cactus, trap moist air close to its trunk. This retards any evaporation that might be taking place. The spines are actually reduced leaves. Many are white and help reflect the heat away from the surface of the plant. Spikes do also offer protection, but as they've evolved, so animals have found ways of getting around them, from birds to iguanas. This iguana has used its paws to break the spines off this cactus fruit. And this bird is just as nimble at avoiding the spikes. The giant spikes of the acacia are too formidable to be broken off, but that doesn't mean that the tree is safe. The giraffe's long, flexible tongue slips between the thorns and strips the leaves away, 5 meters above the ground. But some spikes have a completely different function. The spikes on this Costa Rican bullhorn acacia are not meant to repel all invaders. They're actually designed to attract some. At the base of each leaf, there are little holes called nectaries, which provide these stinging ants with a sugary drink. They swarm over the tree. In fact, the ants make their home here, cutting holes into the hollow thorns and then using them as nurseries. The tips of the tree's leaves produce waxy nodules, which the ants harvest and feed to their young. It seems as if the tree is doing all the giving, but it also gets something back: protection. Ants swarm over the tree and defend their territory by stinging any leaf-eating predators. Some plants, however, want to be eaten, and then they don't wear protective armor. They flutter their eyelashes and produce succulent, tantalizing fruits. Hungry suitors of all kinds are attracted. Eat the sweet, fleshy fruit, swallow the seeds, and then carry them away. The seeds themselves are protected by an outer casing, strong enough to withstand an animal's digestive system. In fact, they're little armored packets of life, waiting to be deposited somewhere. The acacias of East Africa have their seeds in small twisted pods. These are so hard that those which fall to the ground close to the tree often don't germinate. But the seeds eaten by elephants have their shells weakened by the animal's digestive systems, allowing the embryo inside to break out far away from the parent tree. In this state, the seeds are also easier to eat. But plenty will survive, even these scavenging baboons. With the shell split apart, each of these little shoots will now try to grow into an acacia, bristling with a white armor of thorns. Let's head up northwest into the Lone Star State of Texas, and the only mammal with a true shell.
This odd-looking fella seems well armoured. And he is. He has thin plates of bone actually in his skin. The individual plates overlap to form rings on his back, He has 9, and so he's a 9-banded armadillo, though they can have as few as 7, or as many as 11 bands. The wide-open ranges of Texas are not its original home, though. It's a creature of the jungles of Central and South America. 50-million-year-old fossilized armadillo remains have been found in South America, which means that for a long, long time, their shells offered them excellent protection, mainly from thorns, because there were relatively few large predators. But once the land bridge between North and South America had formed, about 3.5 million years ago, the armadillos were in trouble, because there was a sudden influx of large armadillo-eating carnivores. Although the armadillo's shell is made of bone, it's rather thin and is no match for a puma's sharp teeth. This one's armor plating won't protect it for very long. But once the carnivores could migrate south, the armadillos could, of course, go north. They're surprisingly nimble, can travel extremely long distances, and are good swimmers both on the surface and underwater. They're able to swallow air and store it in their intestines, making them more buoyant. Since the 1850s, they've moved up into Mexico, crossed the Rio Grande, and arrived in Texas. There, they found a land of plenty, lots of insects to eat, soft ground to dig in, an armadillo Eden. They've actually become the state mammal of Texas, and although they like to dig burrows, they're tolerated where burrows are usually not very welcome. Current estimates of the US armadillo population: between 30 and 50 million. A field of flowering lupins means it's springtime, and this female armadillo is looking for a suitable burrow in which to give birth. And here, we come across perhaps the most amazing thing about these little animals. Armadillos always give birth to quadruplets, a single egg splitting to form 4 identical little babies. At first, their shells are as soft as a human fingernail, but then the bone in the skin begins to harden, and 4 more armored adventurers will continue the conquest of North America. The name armadillo comes from Spanish and means little armored thing. They're not very big, but one of their ancestors was enormous, larger than a rhinoceros. The native South Americans used to roof their houses with the 3-meter-long strips of armor. When you think of armor, you tend to think of an armored car. Well, the closest thing to that in nature is found here, on the lower slopes of Mount Kenya.
It's not a buffalo. It's certainly not a giraffe. And it's not an elephant either. Weighing about 2 tons and built a bit like a battle tank, the shy black rhino is the most prized occupant of the Lewa Wildlife Conservancy, and closely watched. There were 20,000 black rhinos in Kenya in the 1970s. Now there are fewer than 400. The Lewa Conservancy began life as a cattle ranch. But in 1982, when poaching was at its peak, Mrs. Anna Mertz made a proposition to the family that owned it. If they would loan her the land, she would provide the funds to start the first rhino sanctuary in Kenya. The cattle were removed, and white rhinos were added to the black rhinos already here. These are the white sort. As you can see, they're not really white at all. The name comes from a mistranslation of the Afrikaans word for wide, which described the shape of their lower lip. They don't have bony plates like armadillos, but their skin is impressively thick. They have two massive horns, the cause of their undoing, for it's the horns that the poachers are after. There's a false belief that they have aphrodisiac properties, and armed guards are essential if these animals are to survive. In the last 30 years, 97% of the world's rhinos have been killed by hunters and poachers. Over the years, the first 2,000 hectares of cattle ranch have grown into 267 square kilometers of fenced sanctuary. There are 160 kilometers of electric fencing, all of it patrolled by armed guards. And the power is generated by solar panels. Not all of the perimeter is electrified. There are small gaps in the fence to allow migrating animals to pass through, though a low wall of rocks is enough to discourage the rhinos from moving. Lishan is one of the 200 guards who work within the sanctuary. In fact, Lewa is the largest single employer in the eastern province. There's a clinic and 4 primary schools. But out here in the bush, security, not education, is top priority. And that means keeping track of the 26 black and 32 white rhinos that live here. Lishan knows all the 58 rhinos by sight and has a good idea which one left these prints and where it's headed. He does his work on foot, and the movements of all the rhinos are constantly checked. Here Lishan has come across a female with a recently born youngster. Rhinos are nearsighted and can't focus on anything further than 30 meters away. They sometimes charge if they're suspicious, but not today. With the rhinos teetering on the edge of extinction, every new youngster is a triumph, and the news is radioed back to the base. All the information is stored in the reserve's database. They immediately know if an animal is ill or missing. If an individual isn't sighted for 3 days, a search is started. Apart from the rhinos, there are several other rare species in this spectacular bit of land. Monitoring and protecting them all is expensive. The current running costs are about $600,000 a year. And it's hoped that income from safari guests will provide a growing proportion of the money in the future. This rhino is called Mukuru. He's a large male and was moved here after killing a rhino in a fight in another sanctuary. The point of his horn has been sanded down a bit to stop him doing any more damage. Perhaps out in the wild he gets picked on, and so he's decided it's safer near the camp. In 1996, the size of the reserve was increased by incorporating a nearby ranch and the adjoining tribal lands. There are now over 300 square kilometers over which the wildlife can move completely freely. It's a huge domain to patrol, and for Lishan, it's his life's work, protecting the armored leviathans of Lewa.